My name is Dave Finnegan, and I helped to start Build-A-Bear a long time ago, and then from Build-A-Bear went on to work for Orvis as the experience officer. I'd like to introduce our panel. First, Melissa Dixon, Senior Director and Brand and Content Marketing Manager of BigCommerce.
Thank you.
Amera Khalil. Khalil. Strategic Account Director for Feedonomics.
Yeah.
And Michael Challinger, CEO of Houzer.
Yeah. Thank you so much. All right, can everyone hear me okay? Sounds like it. Thank you so much for coming to our panel. We are going to talk all about omnichannel commerce and the landscape and current tools and technologies to really drive your strategy forward. So to do that, we have two amazing experts in their fields, and I will let them introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their companies and their roles.
You want me to go first?
Go for it. Give us a brief
good.
intro.
Sequential here. Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Challinger. I'm currently the CEO at a company called Houzer. We sell what I used to say are rectangles, but again, I think it's well put that this is something that is a very emotive and emotional cornerstone of a lot of your family memories. The kitchen is very much the center of your house. My background is broadly in retail e-commerce. I spent my 20s growing a business called Build.com as part of the leadership team from a few million to north of $1 billion in revenue. My 30s, I spent working on the brand side in what is now called Omnichannel. We didn't have that cool word for it back then, so I was just the guy who was in charge of Amazon on D2C and stuff like that. About 3 years ago, I sort of started my transition, I guess, from being a guy who, if I met someone at a bar and they asked what I did, I said e-commerce, to being a guy who was actually running companies. I still tell people if I meet them at a bar that I work in e-commerce, because at this point, commerce is just e-commerce. I met these guys through our journey as I came into Houzer 2 years ago, of deciding what the new platform at the center of our business was going to be. And as you'll hear today, the rest is history.
Great. Amera.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amera Khalil. I'm a Senior Strategic Account Director at Feedonomics. My role is really designed to help a lot of different merchants and partners, maybe a consistent partner of ours, kind of go through the journey and understanding the need for a middleware and a feed provider as the ever-evolving landscape shifts in commerce or e-commerce. And so I've been at the company for 3 years. Before that, I was with Zillow Group or Zillow.com. So I was working in a totally different industry with very similar conversations, helping support big partners who needed to be able to scale and expand and grow at rapid space and pace. And so my job is to help make your life a little bit more simple, to take the feed-related things off of your plate. And then I get to work with fantastic partners like Michael in their journey. That's sort of not only just a Feedonomics conversation once, it's a forever evolving iteration, and we kind of stay together as a partnership to help understand the omnichannel strategies as a whole as the year evolves.
And to round us out, my name is Melissa Dixon. I'm Senior Director of Brand and Content Marketing at BigCommerce, which is an enterprise-grade e-commerce platform. We're known for our extreme flexibility and freedom to customize and open API architecture. And Feedonomics is our subsidiary. So Michael here, Houzer, is a joint customer, and they have a really fascinating omnichannel use case that we're going to tell you all about and also talk about the bigger picture. So with that, let's get started, you two.
Let's do it.
Okay, Amera,
Yes.
I would love for you to help set the stage for this audience with current omnichannel, expectations. What are you seeing out there? How are shopper expectations really impacting brands and retailers? Give us the rundown.
Happily. Well, we're all consumers, right? We push a button, we want magic to happen, right? I am so impatient. If I have to wait 2 days for something to come to me, I'm like, what's taking so long? And it's evolved, and we're only getting a little bit more intense, where we want to make sure that we're getting things delivered to us quickly. And so the evolution is saying that, hey, I'm the consumer who wants to be able to have this really important brand experience on every different avenue that I'm going to, right? I know a product. I want to go and have that same lived experience that I would in a store, but I want to have it at the ease, and maybe if I'm jumping on Amazon, I want to have Prime delivery sent in 2 days. I also want to be able to go into a store and have that experience, and if my size isn't available, then I expect it to be sent to me really quickly. So there's this need for speed. And so that kind of environment isn't going anywhere. It's not changing, right? We've seen it over the last number of years, and now we kind of see that impatience is growing a little bit more intensely. And so as we see that, you see that there's various partners very similar to Michael any of the brands where they need to be able to say, wait a second, we've been investing a ton of our time and resources in giving a person an incredible brand experience in a store, but now how do we do that on a marketplace? How do we do that when we're sending all our feeds to Google and Meta and all these different places where they're seeing our product, they know our brand, and how, or with influencers, right? So it's being able to take that kind of ever-evolving landscape and bring it into one space, and then having a lot more control, and that's a really difficult thing for partners to do. There's a lot of systems at play, there's a lot of different nuances, but the consumer themselves, their mind isn't shifting. I want to be able to push a button and make magic happen and do it quickly, and I want to be able to check out with my wallet on my phone so I don't have to whip out my credit card and type in the numbers, because who likes doing that? So there's this kind of big shift that we sort of knew was coming, but in the last few months, 2024 started pretty intensely. So now we're looking for a really important area for us to drive efficiencies, operational efficiencies, and an overall understanding of our tech stack, which historically we wouldn't necessarily have to do to be able to orchestrate all of these different avenues in which we are sending our feeds.
Yeah, just such a higher demand for convenience, and it's all about removing the friction and having the right tech stack, which we'll get into. One of the biggest misconceptions about omnichannel selling, I think, is that, or perhaps it was before this year, was that you have to be everywhere, it's everything everywhere all at once. But really, it's about testing and learning and what's right for your brand, I think. So tell us a little bit, because I know you have a strong perspective on this, how a company's maturity or their business profile can really impact where they should be selling.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And to take one step back, my role is to help support some of the largest global brands and some of our largest agencies. So I get to experience a lot of different narratives from different customers across the board for the single channel, multi-channel, or the global omni-channel strategy. And so one of my colleagues, Matt Dornfeld, he often says that every client is a snowflake. And I love that, because it's true. There's a ton of different things that are at play. So for example, in a single channel environment, I can imagine a partner who's had a couple of SKUs in their catalog, right? And maybe they were just online and they found an influencer who helped kind of boom their experience. They're in a very different journey than somebody on the global omni-channel, right? That doesn't mean they're not going to get there, but we have to understand kind of where you're at in that maturity curve or that maturity chart. And so that single channel mindset is more so focusing on optimizing on Google, which is where probably most of the spend is kind of lying at. So taking that experience and saying, great, let's get the foundation, let's understand your systems at play, let's optimize to best practices, and let's send it out in real time and remove any of the errors and any of the potential things that cause a headache or revenue dollars loss or overall, just a little bit more of a simple dynamic, but let's get that to be operationally efficient. And then we can kind of expand into the next iteration, which is let's go into that multi-channel, right? It's not just Google anymore. Maybe they want to go and they want to sell on TikTok Shop. Yeah. Maybe it's time for Amazon or something along those lines. So then you're saying, okay, maybe it's 2 or 3 channels, and that gets you into that multi-channel experience where you still have those important systems at play. You've got a really stable foundation for basic optimization and the need for being able to bring your brand into the product and the keyword and maybe your sizing and all of the things that are important to you all as merchants that needs to be pulled out of the e-commerce platform and then sent by best practices on a channel by channel basis. And then once that kind of area is a little bit more foundational, then you can say, great, the next iteration is the omni-channel globally, right? So I support partners that are global, multiple languages, different locales. You have a lot of nuances that are at play for every different region. I'm thinking of some brands in my head. I can't quite share them, but they have a lot of languages and a lot of SKUs. And so what they primarily focus on is optimization, but it's making very minute changes within the data. And the reason being is that because that is something that they can A/B test on AI, because the AI is what's kind of sending them all of the good. So anyway, maybe I digress, but the important part is iterating that not every single client or merchant is going to be in the same part of this journey. And then if you can focus in exactly where you're at, then you have a lot better approach at being strategic and focused and driving a lot more clear of a plan to then get you to those goals as you map out your year, 5 years, whatever that might look like for the business.
Yeah, well, let's talk about how and where Houzer fits into this model. So Michael, tell us a little bit about what your challenges have been and really what you were trying to achieve with your omnichannel strategy and kind of where you are in here.
Yeah, so I think a piece of this comes back to something that you said, Amera, which is testing and learning. I think most brands, even large global omnichannel ones, still have to follow this. My business is a little unique because I came in running a small company, but I was also here to build the template for investment. So our owners, who are Israeli-based, wanted to take this business and use it almost as a mold to build the technology infrastructure and structure for growth to apply to this business and then buy accretive businesses and bolt onto it. So coming into this 2 years ago, our tech stack was almost a tabula rasa, a blank slate. I had the unique opportunity to go and chat with various colleagues and people who I've trusted to make good decisions in the past and say, what if you didn't have a tech stack? What if you could start from nothing? What would you put in? How would you build for omnichannel? Back to your small, medium, and large. I said, we're coming into this as a small, but we want to build this to be able to scale up to at least that middle, where you're selling across a number of marketplaces. You have, as you said, at least like the Google and the core pieces of the digital marketing funnel, and then eventually scale this to be global because we are part of a global business. So we went through a pretty lengthy process of deciding what that architecture needed to be. I happened to meet some of the folks from BigCommerce and Feedonomics in that process. We were looking for a platform that would allow us to scale on an omnichannel basis because the business was actually much more omnichannel than it was D2C. Being grounded in a retail e-commerce background, of course, the very first thing that I did was to push us toward D2C. So we obviously launched that on BigCommerce, but we needed a partner who could also service the immediate, again, in the small, medium, large template that you saw before, the immediate small needs that we had, and that was still BigCommerce and Feedonomics. Now that we're moving from sort of the small into the medium, and we're looking to accrete these other brands, finish these acquisitions, and bolt them onto the same tech platform, we're now moving into that middle one, and then obviously in a couple of years' time, the ambition is to reach that sort of global scale, where we are now multiple countries, we are selling these products across the entire landscape, across every marketing channel imaginable. And at that point, I think you articulated this, it is truly everything, everywhere, everything everywhere all at once.
Yeah.
But at the start, you have to test and learn, I think, across each of those.
And how has that shifted your strategy? I mean, you're on this trajectory for global growth, but have you learned things that have made you pivot along the way?
Absolutely. I would say in terms of lots of things outside of this sphere, but as we've gone through the process specifically of launching within the BigCommerce and Feedonomics architecture, a lot of it has come down to data integrity, right?
Yeah.
I think everybody imagines their data to be better than it actually is, and the process of interfacing that through something like a Feedonomics that is now broadcasting it out has created a lot of, it's sort of like holding a mirror up to your whole business. And so that's really, it's allowed us to level that up, and that's actually had a huge benefit across all of Omnichannel. Coming in, I thought that our data was pretty good. That changed very quickly once it began to be magnified out there across all the different feeds coming out to the marketing channels, as well as all the different feeds going out to the marketplaces.
Yeah, I like that analogy too with the mirror. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to ask you, Michael, about your experience, because I'm getting this question really just a lot on other panels and from our BigCommerce customers, talking about acquisition versus retention. It's a big one. I'm sure this audience cares about it. So what is Houzer's approach? What's your approach to balancing? And what's your advice to maybe some of these brands and retailers trying to do this with a limited budget and figure out the right mix?
I would say it comes back to the test and learn at the outset. I think you need to understand who your customer is. For our business, we started this out from a very consumer-focused approach, which, to be honest, I should have known better. Being in this industry before, a big piece of what allowed us to grow Build.com to the scale that it eventually did get to was focusing on that pro customer. At the beginning of this journey, back to learnings, I was very fixated on that consumer journey and, again, on the emotive power of the kitchen sink as the heart of your kitchen. But what I very quickly realized, or perhaps remembered from a decade ago in my career, is that people don't buy kitchen sinks very often. And so I had to step back and ask myself from a test and learn standpoint, I said, well, wait a minute, we have no LTV from these customers? Because, again, they're buying every 10 years. So how do we go and find a customer that actually buys like a consumer? And the answer to that is pros. Plumbers, builders, people like that. And so we actually, again, from a test and learn standpoint, had to step back and go, okay, hold on. We still need a strategy for the consumer, but we really need to actually bifurcate this into two. And going all the way back to the decision process of selecting BigCommerce, the original architecture and scheming there was we knew that pro needed to be important, and the B2B capabilities that BigCommerce had were a huge piece of why we ended up selecting them over any of the competitors in that RFP. And so, again, coming back around to the marketing side of this, we realized very quickly that we needed to actually zoom all the way out and understand who these customers were, how we wanted speak to them over the continuum of their purchase, and make sure that we were messaging correctly. So that's a radically different approach, message, tone. The life cycle is very different. The channels actually that you're reaching those people. Plumbers, of course, still have phones and they're interacting with a lot of things, but there's actually a lot of offline channels that become very relevant for talking to that pro. The voice is completely different. A lot of the follow-up is also very important to build those relationships. So I would say, back to your core question, the first step is to almost throw away all the assumptions that you might have about your consumer and make sure you really understand, are you even talking to the right customer? Because for us, as we grow this business, I mean, the consumers remain important, but actually that pro customer is so much more valuable to us, especially on the D2C side of the journey. Omnichannel is a very different story. Retail media is a very different story. And I look at those as ways to get our brand into the hearts and minds of the homeowners so that when they're talking to their plumber, they go, I want a Houzer sink in my kitchen.
Great advice, great insights. Yeah, I mean, Houzer is such an interesting use case. I would love to know, Amera, on a broader scale though, what are some of the systems, the best practices that you think are critical for a harmonious omni-channel approach today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think about that actually quite often. And so I think Houzer is a really good example because a lot of the things that he's mentioned are hallmarks in a relationship that we see with a lot of partners at a global scale, as well as partners that have a brand that has a certain number of SKUs, kind of back to that maturity model. It kind of varies, but it's a similar story of being able to evolve and then also connect with the client and understand the goals. Like this is, Feedonomics leads with technology with a heart. And as cheesy as that is, we mean it. We give you a dedicated point of contact that's a human, right? It's not just like a blog that says good luck, right? We sit there and we give you that person. That enterprise feed manager becomes a part of your team. You can consider them similar to a project manager. And I think that that's one of the most incredible features that we offer, and in partnership with clients and merchants like Michael and his team, because it's very hard to articulate kind of your overall goal if you're not having a conversation and being able to say, hey, by the way, we're launching this idea for this non-D2C site because we want to reach out to these different plumbers, for the example. Okay, great. Well, there's optimization that can be leveraged because those locations are still receiving a feed of some capacity. But had we not had that conversation, we wouldn't be able to break down the benefits of saying, yes, an optimized feed is still pumping out to all the AI machines that are out there. And you want to be able to feed them the fruits and the vegetables of most optimized information. And then that's going to be sent out and it's going to drive up your performance and any capacity by just having an optimized feed. Oh, and by the way, we already have all the data and we can export it out as long as you give us this information for no additional cost, right? I digress because I get jazzed about feeds. But going back to your original question, I think having that partnership with an agency is an incredible partnership to have. Feedonomics works really well with them because we're not stepping on toes. We're designed to create an environment where we understand their goals and their deliverables that they've promised the client. And then we say, okay, great. Well, let's give you that really stable foundation. Oh, and by the way, I'm hearing that you're asking for us to apply A/B testing, or you want to be able to have custom labels that are a little bit more unique to apply specifically to your end goal. And so as long as you can kind of speak into existence what you're looking to accomplish, the Feedonomics team can go, oh yeah, I know the back end. You don't have to worry about that. We'll go ahead and apply this. So part one is an agency in partnership with communicating the overall goals. And then I think the other part that's really important is just knowing where you're at in that maturity model as a business, and then also being able to articulate the various systems at play, because our job at Feedonomics is to be the people who understand all the different systems of record. You don't have to understand all the piping and how they all work together, but please explain to us kind of that architecture, because I say this to a lot of my clients. It's like, I know that your business is like Narnia, and I'm going to have a really hard time figuring out how to get through it. But that's where I lean into you to help me understand. And then I can bring in the experts on my side to give you a little bit more of a smooth journey, because feeds it's complicated and there's a lot of moving parts. And then you start to learn all the nuances. And so agency partnership, communication, and then also knowing where you're at. I think those are all incredible.
Knowing where you're at, and to Michael's point, knowing your customer. So critical. Well, we could talk about this all day, but I think we're going to have to start wrapping it up. I would love for this audience to hear, as we close it out, just what you're both excited about. Michael, what are you most excited about moving forward? Where are you investing?
So let me start with the first of those, and we might even run out of time on that. But I would be remiss, I think, not to bring AI up here. I think we're very close to the killer apps beginning to emerge. I've seen a couple of these already in the last couple of conferences I've attended. I think that the brands who have already made the investment into D2C are really well poised to reap the fruits of those killer apps as they begin to develop. If you aren't invested in D2C in your brand, you probably are about to get laughed by your competitors, because what's going to happen is those killer apps will come in. And if you don't have the wealth of first-party data that you're able to capture from having a direct-to-consumer piece of your business, whether that is live chats, whether that is UGC on your product pages, things like that, the AI won't have anything to chew on. So the first thing that all of these are going to do is train on your data. If your data set is non-existent, then you're going to inherently be behind. So I'm very excited to see those killer apps start to come out. There are people who are sort of developing themselves. I have spoken with a couple of people recently who have developed some really impressive things, but I think at the end of this year or within the next 6 to 12 months, you'll see those. So I think that's quite exciting.
Always back to the data.
Amen.
It's critical.
You need it.
Yeah. Well, great advice. And Amera, what do you think the biggest opportunities are for brands and retailers? Close us out.
Oh gosh, this is a hard one to close out because there's so many thoughts. You know, the Amazon Today notion that we're actually at the same time Sharon Gee, our SVP, is speaking about is something that I'm really excited about because I'm a consumer, right? So I want to be able to, like I said, I'm that impatient person where I want to click a button and have magic happen. And the idea behind being able to purchase something on Amazon and then going to a store to pick it up or having it delivered to me in a few hours is pretty incredible for the lifestyle that I live. I travel all the time for work. It's barbaric to wait a few hours for something to be sent to me, right? Who have I become? But what I'm seeing is that there's a lot of clients and partners that are so excited about this. And it's not just limited to Amazon, but it's the instant commerce is what we call it. And this is an important thing because what we're seeing is that a lot of partners have not really been thinking about this. So a lot of the systems at play aren't able to speak in the way that they need to bring everything together. And it's causing an incredible time lapse of going, hey, this is pushing them behind, kind of to Michael's point, 6, 9, 12 months. And if you're thinking about it now and you can't execute for a year, it's a tough place to be. And so being able to think about that and just understanding where technology is at today, kind of back to that maturity curve, it's really important. And so knowing that that is something that's coming and it's not going away, and getting on board with it. If there needs to be changes, RFPs, discussions, things of those sorts, or at least discovery, I think it's imperative for the business to continue on.
Thank you. Well said. Yeah, thank you both for your insights and great tips. If anyone wants to chat with us more, stop by the Feedonomics or the BigCommerce booth. Michael will be hanging out with us for a little bit too. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.